Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnananjanishalaakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Presthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swamin Niti Namine. Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Mudirayet. In this session, we'll be discussing from the third verse of the 12th chapter of the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. This chapter describes birth of Emperor Parikshit. Tadidam shrotum ichhamo gaditum yadi manyase bruhina shraddadhananam Yasya jnanam adachukaha. The meaning of this verse is, we all respectfully want to hear about him, that is Maharaj Parikshit, to whom Shukadev Goswami imparted transcendental knowledge. Please speak on this matter. So in the purport, Srila Prabhupada explains, Shukadev Goswami imparted transcendental knowledge to Maharaj Parikshit during the remaining 7 days of his life, and Maharaj Parikshit heard him properly, just like an ardent student. The effect of such a bona fide hearing and chanting of Srimad Bhagavatam was equally shared by both the hearer and the chanter. Both of them were benefited. Elsewhere it is explained that there are 9 different ways of executing devotional service, Navavida Bhakti, and 9 different personalities, they attained perfection of self-realization simply by adopting one of the 9 ways of doing devotional service. And in that description, it is said, Parikshit Maharaj attained perfection simply by hearing properly the Srimad Bhagavatam as was spoken to him by Shukadev Goswami. Then it is said, Shukadev Goswami attained perfection of self-realization simply by speaking Srimad Bhagavatam to Parikshit Maharaj and all the assembled saintly persons. So, the benefit of speaking Bhagavatam was shared by the hearer and the chanter. Hearer was Parikshit, chanter was Shukadev Goswami. So Srila Prabhupada says, both of them were benefited, Parikshit Maharaj as well as Shukadev Goswami. Out of the 9 different transcendental means of devotional service to the Lord prescribed in the Bhagavatam, Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, Smaranam, Padasevanam, Archanam, Vandanam, Dasyam, Sakhyam, Atmanivedanam, either all of them or some of them or even one of them are equally beneficial if properly discharged. Maharaj Parikshit and Shukadev Goswami were serious performers of the first 2 items, namely the process of chanting and the process of hearing, and therefore both of them were successful in their laudable attempt. Srila Prabhupada is now going to tell a very, very important point for all of us to note regarding devotional service. Transcendental realization is attained by such serious hearing and chanting and not otherwise. There is a type of spiritual master and disciple much advertised in this age of Kali. It is said that the master injects spiritual force into the disciple by an electric current generated by the master, and the disciple begins to feel the shock. He becomes unconscious, and the master weeps for his exhausting his store of so-called spiritual assets. Such bogus advertisement is going on in this age, and the poor common man is becoming the victim of such advertisement. So Srila Prabhupada is talking about the bogus methods adopted by some bogus spiritual master or spiritual learners. Both are bogus, because nowhere in the scriptures you can find any description that the master is touching the disciple, the spiritual master touching the disciple, and some spiritual force is injected. All this is rubbish, nonsense. There is no such thing in the entire Vedic literature. And further, you see the description here of this bogus people, that by the touch some electrical current is generated, and the disciple feels some kind of shock, and suddenly the disciple becomes unconscious because of the shock. And this bogus spiritual master, he begins to cry, "Oh, by touching you, my spiritual asset is completely become nil. I have lost all the knowledge that I had." This kind of advertisement is going on, and it's being glorified as some great enlightenment of the disciple by the touch of the master. This is totally bogus. Nowhere in the entire Vedic, authentic Vedic literature, you find that somebody is touching and then he becomes bereft of all his transcendental knowledge, and the disciple is enlightened and the disciple feels shock. All these bogus things are never there in any authentic scriptures. On the other hand, we find in every Upanishad, in every Purana, we find they are sitting and hearing, asking intelligent questions, and the spiritual master is speaking coherently, very, very specifically answering the question to the point, without any of this kind of touching and shock and unconscious experience. None of these bogus things are there in the scriptures. So Srila Prabhupada is warning us, please don't become victim of such false propaganda. These are all for innocent, ignorant, poor people who do not know what is spiritual life, and they are somehow attracted by some advertisement, and they are cheated, completely cheated. Nothing is going to happen by somebody touching, that some touch will make somebody enlightened. No such thing is there. Why are there so many books? Why is there so much wealth of literature? What is the reason? If touch were to work, why there has to be so much of knowledge? Why Krishna has to speak Bhagavad Gita to Arjuna and through Arjuna to all of us? And that has to be explained. Every single word spoken by Krishna is explained by the acharyas. Nowhere you find any acharya touching somebody and making that person enlightened. Nowhere we find like that. Why the acharyas have to write commentaries? Why they have to explain systematically? So please beware of false advertisement by such bogus spiritual masters and bogus disciples. It's total cheating. I don't want to mention the name, but you inquire and you will know that this is so much advertised of one so-called guru and his disciple, and both are worshipped and become very, very popular, and a big institution is today there standing in the name of that bogus master and bogus disciple, and people are glorifying this business of touching and electric current and enlightenment and unconscious experience. They are glorifying this. This is total cheating. So Srila Prabhupada says, we do not find such folk tales in the dealings of Shukadev Goswami and his great disciple Maharaj Parikshit. The sage, that is Shukadev Goswami, recited Srimad Bhagavatam in devotion, and the great king heard him properly. The king did not feel any shock of electric current from the master, nor did he become unconscious while receiving the knowledge from the master. No such thing is described anywhere in the entire Bhagavatam. One should not therefore become a victim of these unauthorized advertisements made by some bogus representative of Vedic knowledge. The sages of Naimisharanya were very respectful in hearing about Maharaj Parikshit because of his receiving knowledge from Shukadev Goswami by means of ardent hearing. Very respectfully, very attentively, very seriously, very nicely, Parikshit Maharaj sat down firmly and heard every single word spoken by Shukadev Goswami. Ardent hearing from the bona fide master is the only way to receive transcendental knowledge, and there is no need for medical performances or occult mysticism for miraculous effects. None of these things are described anywhere in the scriptures. The process is simple, but only the sincere party can achieve the desired result, which means that as practitioners of Bhakti Yoga, each one of us, we have to properly hear from Srila Prabhupada or those who are speaking on behalf of Prabhupada, as a representative of Prabhupada, those who are speaking exactly what Prabhupada has spoken or what he has taught, and reasonably explaining to the hearers, to the inquisitive learners, very systematically, patiently, clearly explaining the subject matter. And the hearers also ask questions to clear doubts, to enrich themselves in the knowledge. That's why we have exclusive question answer session, where devotees who are hearing are asking questions to clarify certain points. We don't have any such bogus touching and enlightenment and electric current. Neither any bona fide spiritual master will ever do that. Please remember this. I'll stop here. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.